Hey, everybody. I'm Michelle Carter, Director of Educational Content and Programs at Shape America. Beyond the Check-in, empowering parent-student dialogues about health is produced and developed with funding from Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, with partnership with Shape America, which is a national organization that serves as the voice of health and physical educators, Care and Guidance, a consulting group that specializes in health education, and namely, the National Association for Media Literacy Education. So I'd love to introduce my colleagues. We have Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Chulo-Lipkin. I'm the Executive Director of the National Association for Media Literacy Education.
Christy.
Hi, I am Christy Glenn, founder and CEO of Pinnacle Partnerships, and I come today as a representative of Parent Voice, being somebody who has raised and is always raising my child with mental health and is also part of the neurodiverse community.
And we have Brittany.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brittany Eccles. I'm the Health Education Curriculum Manager with Care and Guidance, and thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you all here. We've been working on through the Beyond the Check-in, and our goal is really to provide parents and caretakers with background information and resources to effectively support their K-5 students with the social, mental, and sexual health through media literacy. So I'm ready to dive in, and Michelle, I'm going to start with you. I like to think of media literacy being the thread that is woven between connecting these important topics of social, mental, and sexual health. So, what exactly, for our parents that are listening right now, what exactly is media literacy and how does that relate to safety?
So first, the definition of media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act using all forms of communication. So it's really about, what does it mean to be a literate person in today's society? And we need skills of expression, we need critical thinking, we need to be effective communicators and active participants, right? We're all swimming in a media saturated world. And the goal of media literacy is really to understand media messages and how they influence us, our beliefs, our moods, our values, our relationships. So we know media messages have profound impact. And so we need kids from a very early age to learn how to navigate that. When it comes to safety, we are of the belief that education is safety, right? And so rather than thinking solely about safety, what if we ask the question, how do we prepare kids for success versus how do we keep kids safe? And so these images are obviously a take on that. But if we really think about the child with the bubble wrap, they're going to be safe, but they're not going to be able to ride that bike. So how can we teach safety through preparing them for success?
I love that. And that image just resonates with me so much. Thinking about our kids in that bubble wrap, like with them navigating through, I love how you said we're swimming in a world that's just so saturated in media. So this is so good, especially I have kids that are elementary age as well. So it really resonates with me. So really media literacy can be honestly, and I think it should be a part of the solution when we're addressing children's mental health, social health, and sexual health. So I really believe like let's get practical for a moment. We believe that that's all really good, but what does it really look like when we're at home every day? Michelle, I'll start with you first, obviously, since you're the expert.
So I think what's most important is how we frame it in the home. And so I like to frame it about creating a balanced, healthy relationship with media and technology in the home. I think that's a really, really good goal. And the way that we see it, and this quote from The Atlantic, I think sums it up. It's not our job as parents to put away the phones. It's our job to take out the phones and teach our kids how to use them. And if we think about, for example, traditional literacy, and we think about sitting next to our child and teaching them how to read, right? It is so intuitive of parents to start reading to their child the moment they're born. But for whatever reason, we often just give technology away, use it as kind of a way for us to get more things done. So what we'd like to look at is reframing that, right? And what does it look like to create a relationship around technology and media that parallels the way that we teach our children to read. And we tend to really be willing to engage our young children in lots of different activities, right? They want to play dress up. They want to go out and throw the ball around. They want to learn music. But for whatever reason, we don't do that with technology and media. So what if we did? What if our kids that were interested in photography, or our kids that were interested in video games, what if we were there beside them, engaging with them? And I think it's really important for us to frame media literacy at home as this intersection of being in relationship with our kids, right? And what we have to remember as parents is that they are really watching us, right? And they're watching what we're doing more than they're listening to what we say. And so we have to think about a healthy media landscape in our home as something that we exemplify, right? That we guide them to have that balanced relationship.
I love that so much. I love it because we really do think about books like, we're pulling out the books, right? The fuzzy books. As soon as they open their eyes, we're putting something in front of them, and we kind of villainize phones and media. And I think it's just because of our knowledge as parents. We want to keep our babies safe, and we know the access that's at their fingertips. So love the idea of reframing. Christy, you mentioned a parent. Some of us are wearing our parent hats here too. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's imperative that as parents, we take the time to understand the way that media literacy really works for our kids and for our families and how our families function. And I think this is one of the great things about what we are sharing here today. And I hope that parents who watch this video share this with other families so that the information can get out, because it can be very overwhelming and resources like this can be very difficult to find. So later on, you'll get more resources around this and how to access them. And there are other organizations similar to mine who have people who are out there that are like coaches using their lived experience to help you navigate these waters. So many times, I think the importance of the safety conversation is paramount. I think as parents, we often think about immediately social media and what that opens up for doorways for potential hazards for our kids along the way. And so what do we do to protect our kids? Knowing all of these different ways, the different platforms, the different ways that we can engage and be together, the way that we would be around a book. I think that was such a beautiful way to put that. Be around the tablet, be around the computer. There are lots of other ways to engage and spend great time with our kids so that it doesn't feel like what is in between us and our kids is that technology, but rather that technology is helping to bring us all together.
I couldn't agree more. And yes, you struck a chord with me when you said overwhelming. It can, when we're thinking about balancing all the things that we want, but really just bringing it in together. Because I can even speak for myself. Sometimes I want to shield that phone when I'm looking at something, but it's really pulling them in the way that we would pull in a book. And I think reframing that is something that as parents thinking about that, and K-5 is a perfect time to do that, right? When kids are young and still you have that they're malleable, right? They can adapt. So thank you. This is so helpful. And as Christy mentioned, there's resources. We have a resource that's conversation starters for parents and caregivers that kind of give you prompts to start these conversations. And don't worry, we got you. Don't worry. We have how to start it and to even go beyond. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But we have Brittany here. I'm going to turn to you, and your background is skills-based health, education, curriculum, and instruction. And so I talked about wearing those two hats. I'm wearing two hats. The parent one, like Christy mentioned, it's overwhelming. We think about all the things. We know it's important to them to talk about balancing all the things. But then when I wear my educator hat, I know how important it is to ensure that youth are getting that information and building health skills around them. We can't just ignore it because we don't want to talk about it and sweep it under the rug. They need to get that information, and at home is a great place to do that. So with that being said, how do we make sure that the content is age appropriate? And how does this happen in health education? Will you share the goals of health education?
Sure. So, first starting off, I always say like one of the main goals of health education is going to be the development of health literacy. And so when we talk about health literacy, we're talking about giving young people, and like you said, Michelle, not just the information, but the skills that they need that are really going to help them maintain health enhancing behaviors, as well as, we want to make sure when we're talking about health education that we're giving them the opportunities that they need to practice as well as navigate behaviors that they may find themselves in that may actually cause harm, or situations that they may find themselves in that may cause harm. And so really when it comes to health education and the goals of health education, it really is about giving young people not only the information, but information and skill, but then also allowing them to have the opportunity to practice those things. So almost how I like to say it most is it almost becomes like second nature. It's almost as easy as breathing for them. And so when we really focus on health literacy, like I said, it's maintaining those health enhancing behaviors, it's providing opportunity, but it's also delaying the onset of experimentation in less safe behaviors. Okay. And so when we think about parents and caregivers and how we can continue to uplift these goals outside of the health education classroom, it's really about continuing the conversation. So that's why those conversation starters are really so great and impactful. But not only about continuing the conversation that's happening in the health education classroom, it's also about giving young people more opportunities. And so one of our colleagues have said that earlier, like we don't want to safeguard when it comes to media and media literacy. We want to make sure that we are giving young people the opportunity to engage in the skills that they are learning inside the classroom. So when we talk about skills, we're talking about, goal setting, decision making, self-management. We're talking about how they access a variety of resources, whether that's a person or an object. So we just want to make sure we're giving them the skills that they need, but not only giving them the skills, but allowing them to practice and engage in them fully. So that is how we define our outline our goals when it comes to health education.
I love that definition. And I'm really hearing the difference when I think about my health education, right? It's just information, recalling information, but the key point is skills and allowing them the opportunity to practice those skills. And that helps them to delay the risk. I love that. And I think that's really good for parents to hear that. So this program is really focused on the social, sexual, and mental health. And we're talking about K-5 children. So could you give us some age-appropriate definitions of what that would look like in each content area?
Sure. So when we think about this audience or this age group, when we talk about mental and emotional health, we're really talking about like how we think, how we feel, and how we handle our emotions. We're also, when we talk about mental and emotional health, we think about how it helps us cope with challenges, how it helps us make good choices, as well as how it helps us enjoy life. And also with mental and emotional health at this age level, we really want to emphasize that, it's really about taking care of our mental health the same way we in the importance of it, the same way we may take care of our bodies. So really helping young people understand when it comes to K-5, like the importance of really making sure that we are in tune to our mental and emotional health, and we are doing the things to ensure that we're supporting it the same way we would engage in certain things like maybe around hygiene to ensure that our bodies are functioning the same way. So just really uplifting the importance at that age. And so when it comes to social health really is around like teaching them how do we get along with others, right? How do we make friends? How do we work together? Because those are pro-social skills that we want them to have at this age. And so also with this age group, it's really about helping them, helping them understand or try to highlight how social health really helps us share, listen, be kind, and problem solve in a positive way. And then last but certainly not least, when it comes to sexual health at this age, it means for us helping them understand as well as respect our bodies, right? And so learning how to set personal boundaries, learning how to treat others with kindness and respect. And it's also about including that knowledge component of how we can stay safe. And why I say knowledge, also the skills of how we can stay safe and ask trusted adults for help when we may have questions or when we may feel like we may be in need. So those are how we are going to define it for that age group. And just making sure like we're not safeguarding. Like that's the one thing that I want to make sure that we are very intentional about. Like we want to give them information. We want to give them skill because we want them to be able to navigate these situations because they do arise, but we want them to be comfortable. And like I said, almost like it's second nature when those things come up for them.
Absolutely. And these are great definitions. I really could see myself using them with my kids. And then I love that they allow the opportunity to build as they get older. You can build on these are like foundational. As I mentioned, those conversation starters, they include those definitions, and we'll have a QR code at the end. So we'll have all of this information there for you. Now, Christy, I'm turning to you for a minute. Your organization provides family with support and tools to navigate the complexities of raising a child with different health needs or learning needs. When you hear Brittany define these topics in health education, what comes to mind on how parents might best support all students, whether they have special needs or are neurodivergent?
I think these conversations are extremely important for all kids, but for kids that have learning differences or are neurodiverse, have mental health needs, it's even more important, right? Because not only are they walking through the world and experiencing the world differently than typically developing kids, they have different types of social groups, and they understand and process information differently. And the way that they respond to things is oftentimes different, and therefore they can be perceived differently in the world, right? And that brings up a whole big bubble of stigma, which I won't dive into right now, but families who may be listening to completely understand this. And I think it's interesting, right? Because when you think about kids who are typically developing, it may be more difficult to talk about areas that are related to sexual health, for instance, right? This is, kids can feel, like it's, I'm going to pause for a second and start over. So when you're talking with kids about sexual health, for example, this may be something that they are a little shy about or are not very comfortable talking about. And of course, we always have to consider the cultures of all families and how open families are about discussing these things as well, right? So having these conversations can be very nuanced, where a lot of times with neurodiverse kids, they have very black and white thinking. And so talking about something very matter of fact and fact-based is actually a great way for them to just take the information, process it, and then they can just move forward with it. And on the flip side of that, social skills for typically developing kids may be much easier because it's more nuanced, and typically developing kids kind of have more ease with going with the flow, but neurodiverse kids have more difficulty understanding those nuances and thinking, I don't understand what these nonverbal cues are from my peers, and how do I get along with these kids who I don't understand and they don't understand me. So talking about these things at home is really important, because as parents, we know our kids from the very beginning, right? We know every bump, bruise, scrape, every cry, every time we held them and coddled them. And so we really understand the things that they understand, that they don't understand, what bothers them or may set them off a little bit more, in the places where we can build on their strengths. And so I think this is extremely important for us to do at home. And then one of the things that we focus on at my organization is that we also really think about how we as parents can be partners with schools and other organizations, because we are the experts on our kids. We know all of that information innately, and we store it in our heads. It doesn't have to be written down on a piece of paper. And so therefore we are actually the best resource for the other people who are teaching these kinds of curriculums in other types of places. And so learning to be a great partner with your school or community-based organization and building that great relationship, especially in these early years, can be so helpful to what the development looks like for your kids over the years to come.
I love it. So much information here. So I want to say we're coming towards the end. Thank you, Brittany, Michelle, and Christy, for sharing your insights and your personal experiences. Before we go, I want to know if you want one last thing that you can leave parents who are listening with this, one sentence, a short sentence, a thought for them to start with. And we'll go Michelle, Christy, Brittany in that order.
Okay, so I would say that, our kids are growing up with technology and media all around them. So ensure that you're having conversations with them and keep talking about it. Don't vilify it, because you're going to have a hard time as they get older if you start doing that. Look at it as risks and opportunities and keep the conversation going.
I would say you are not alone. If you feel like you are struggling, trust me, most of the parents that are sitting next to you at the soccer field feel the same way. So talk to each other because there is unity and community.
I would say start the conversation and continue the conversation.
I love it. So good. And it's so all connected, right? Giving them the power in the schools. It's not putting the fence around them, the skills and the tools, not the schools, not putting the fence around them, but opening up the gate and allowing them to explore safely within that space with you there to hold their hand. So good. I know I've really enjoyed this time together. And parents, we want to encourage you to use those conversations, the other resources that are available with this QR code. And like Brittany said, start these conversations now. You have little kiddos now, but they were going to grow up. And so starting these conversations now help create the foundation for open communication when they're older. So thank you so much. We appreciate you and your time, and thank you for watching.